Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Soul Light Reflections. I'm super happy to have you with me here again today. For those of you who have tuned into the previous 4 episodes, thank you for being here once again. And if this is your first episode tuning in, I highly recommend going back to the other episodes and listening to those as well. They all have a little bit of different insight. And I'll be pulling some concepts from the previous episodes, but rest assured, if you haven't listened to the other episodes, that's totally fine. You can always go back afterwards. So today we're diving into something that I think is so important for all of us on this journey of human existence in this lifetime. Intuition and alignment, and more than anything, the difference between fear and intuition. How do we know when we're truly in alignment, and how can we learn to trust those subtle signals from our inner wisdom? This is one of those conversations that I think we need to have because we all deal with this confusion between fear and intuition on some level. Whether or not you feel like you're a really intuitive person, those fear responses can a lot of times try really hard to override that intuitive knowing that every single one of us has. Let's start with a reminder that I love sharing, which is you don't have to have it all figured out. And actually, let me rephrase, you're never going to have it all figured out. That's literally the point of this human experience. This lifetime is full of ups and downs and light and darkness and twists and turns, and we're not here to control all of those details. The only constant in life is change and contrast. And I've said that on a previous episode as well. The most powerful thing that you can do for yourself is learn to hone in on your intuition and to trust that intuition. Intuition is that inner voice that knows the path that you're supposed to be on, even when it feels confusing or uncertain. It's kind of like your soul's way of speaking to you. It's like your direct line to source, energy, God, the universe, like whatever you want to call it. And it's never going to lead you somewhere that's not meant for you. I feel like a lot of religious people will say something along the lines of like, God will never hand you something that you can't handle. Well, same goes for just the universal energy in general. Like you're never going to be handed something that's not meant for you. But the way I like to think of it is that when you're trusting your intuition and you're living in alignment, it's going to make those things that you're going through a little bit easier. So I have this vision in my head of like you're at a crossroads and there's like multiple paths you could take. There's like 3 or 4 paths in front of you. And one of them is the quote unquote right way, intuitive way. And then the other ways are not the quote unquote right way. However, it's not like any of them are bad. And that's something I want to make clear really early on in this episode. Not trusting your intuition isn't necessarily bad. It just might take you through some like twists and turns that you didn't necessarily need to go through. And had you trusted your intuition, it would have been a little bit of an easier time. So that doesn't mean that like if you're trusting your intuition, your life is just always going to feel easy. But it does mean that when you are in alignment, you're going to feel more of a sense of flow, a sense of ease in not only your mind, but your body too. It's like this like beam of light that guides you even through the darkest and hardest times that we're inevitably going to face in life. So there's like a little part of this that gets a little bit tricky because a lot of us have lost touch with our intuition. And I think that there's like a common misconception that certain people just don't have intuition and certain people do. And I'm here to squash that because that is not true. Every single one of us has intuition. It's just a matter of how those conditioned responses are overriding our intuition and how those conditioned beliefs are overriding our trust in our intuition. So a lot of times we confuse our intuition with fear or with ego or with protective conditioned responses. And that confusion is what leads us to starting to second guess ourselves. And then we start to feel like we can't trust our gut instincts. So that's why I want to talk about the difference between intuition and fear, because they're really not the same thing, but they often like show up at the same time. And I'll give an example of that in a little bit. So I want to break it down. First of all, intuition is a feeling in your body. It's subtle. It's like those little pings that you get when something feels really right or really wrong, or it's very obvious. However, it's calm. It's pretty quiet. It's kind of like compass that's very gently, like subtly kind of pointing you in the right direction, like that's actually aligned for you. And something that I teach my clients in one-on-one coaching is how to turn up the volume of the intuition and then to turn down the volume of the fear. Because intuition starts out really quiet, almost like subliminal messaging. And then you have to turn it up to like really hear what it's saying or how you're feeling about certain things. And then fear, on the other hand, comes from this like inner voice of protection. Now, again, it's not a bad thing. It's there, again, to protect us. So being protected is a pretty good thing, right? But a lot of times that fear comes up from past experiences, from trauma, and like trying to keep ourselves safe. And that fear tends to show up as overthinking or doubting your gut or kind of like being frozen in place, like not being able to take action behind anything. So it's like that fight or flight or freeze response that's kicking in because your nervous system is on high alert. It's like, wait a second, whoa, like something big is happening. And then we end up either like getting overwhelmed and running away, or getting overwhelmed and causing chaos and drama, or getting overwhelmed and just freezing and not doing anything. And so the important thing that I want to really like bang home is fear is not your intuition. They're not the same thing. So a little example is like if you're about to make a big decision and you get this like initial gut feeling about it, like maybe you get really excited and maybe you get like a little bit uneasy. That's your intuition. But then like within literally like milliseconds, your brain jumps in and starts telling you all the reasons that like it's probably not going to work out, or you should be scared, or like you should just stay where you are. That's fear. The tricky part is, like I said before, fear is fucking fast. Like it will literally jump in right after, like milliseconds after that intuitive hit. And the next thing you know, you're overthinking everything. You're feeling unsure and you're like, I don't know. Should I really do that? I don't know. Going back and forth. The intuition will never go back and forth. The intuition knows. And so a lot of times when we start second guessing, that's automatically the fear response. So I like to tell my clients, like, pay close attention to the feeling that you get within the first like 5 seconds of thinking about something. Like before your brain has a chance to try to jump in and rationalize, overanalyze, get fearful, notice what your body is actually telling you. Whatever the idea might be, does it make you feel light and energized, or does it make you feel heavy and like constricted? Because that initial feeling, especially in your body, is your intuition speaking. Those body feels, like how you feel something in your heart or in the pit of your stomach, or tingles in your hands, or, you know, you start gazing around the room. All of these things are body responses. And so we talked in another episode about embodiment, and that is the embodiment of your intuition, is those body responses. So sometimes things get a little bit messy and we override those intuitive hits without necessarily like fully realizing that that's what we're doing. And we start to like let fear take the wheel by second guessing, by doubting ourselves. And then sometimes we end up taking like detours in life. Like I was talking about, those other paths that might not be the path of least resistance. It might cause a lot more resistance. And I want you to remember that that's okay. Those detours aren't bad. They're not wrong. They're just part of the journey. And sometimes we have to take that long way, or that scary way, or that harder way in order to learn something really important, or maybe grow in a new way. And so even if we're not always trusting our intuition, it's always going to be the right way. Like we're always going to be led in a direction towards the end goal, or whatever our path is supposed to be in this life. They all of those paths lead to the same place, is what I'm trying to say. But of course, we want to make things easier on ourselves as much as possible. So how do we get better at following our intuition? The first thing it starts with is awareness. I scream this from the rooftops about basically everything in this human existence. Like everything starts with awareness. You have to know what's happening in order to change anything or do anything. So first things first, we have to pay attention to how our body is reacting to the things around us. Notice how you're feeling when you're making decisions, or like when you're meeting new people. Like a lot of times we pick up on vibes before we can even put it into words. And I feel like the word vibe is like really thrown around like crazy. It's maybe overused, but I also think it's a very powerful word. I actually talked to my sister about this recently. She was like, yeah, I know you use the word vibe all the time, but I just feel like Vibe is so like, oh, what's the vibe? Just kind of thrown around in like many, social situations. But I'm talking like literally the vibration, the frequency of the situation or the person or whatever it is that you're doing. Pick up on that, because a lot of times that is going to tell you more than words ever will or than your brain ever will. You know that feeling when you meet someone for the first time and you like either immediately feel drawn to their energy or you immediately are like, oh, no, there's something off here. That's your intuition. Your intuition works on a body level before your mind ever catches up, because guess what? Vibes don't lie. Okay, they literally don't lie. So I have some simple questions for you to start asking yourself when you're facing a choice that will allow you to tune a little bit more into that intuition. Question number 1 is, which option feels lighter? Question number 2 is, which one makes me feel excited? And then question number 3 is, what is the resistance that I'm feeling to each option? So in asking yourself these questions, you might find that one option gives you like, a little zing of excitement, like a little like, oh my gosh, wait, I'm excited, right? Or one option, when you're thinking about it, might feel a little bit heavier, might feel like instant reservations, right? Or might feel more complicated. And I'm not talking like your brain jumping in and being like, I don't know, that sounds really complicated. I'm talking like that initial like stomach feel of like something's off. And I urge you to trust that feeling. That's your intuition that's trying to guide you towards what's actually aligned for you. Remember that the first couple times that you start trusting your intuition, it might feel like a fluke when things are actually working out, because our human brains are hardwired to want evidence for everything. And intuition doesn't always have a rational explanation. But the more that you're listening to those little pings, the more you'll realize, wait a second, it's actually not a fluke. It actually works out every single time that I'm like listening, whether or not I know why I'm listening. And that's a big tip, because a lot of times you might listen to your intuition and be like, okay, I guess like I'm listening to this. This feels kind of crazy. And you might not know why that one answer was the answer for like days, weeks, months, maybe even years. But the more that you practice trusting your intuition, the easier it will become to actually follow through with that in your actions. And like I said, the less resistance you'll face in your life. It's literally your soul's wisdom guiding you towards what's meant for you. It's like your lifeline to the universe. I picture, if you've seen the movie Avatar or Avatar 2, that, oh my gosh, such good movies. I picture like, you know how on the avatars like have their little tail and then they link into trees and it like, creates this beautiful experience for them. It's kind of like that. Like your intuition is that. It's that link to the universal guidance system. And the more that we strengthen that intuition, it's 4:44 p.m. right now. Hello, angels. The more that we strengthen that intuitive system, the more we realize how powerful it is. And the easier life gets in some areas. And I guess on the flip side of that, sometimes trusting your intuition might lead you into something that doesn't feel super fucking cushy. Not gonna lie. However, you can have faith that even then, everything is meant for you. Everything happens the way it's supposed to. So maybe it might not lead you to like the best situation right away, but eventually you'll understand why you were led to that situation, what you learned from it, what you can gain from it, the insight, the wisdom, and then you can continue forward even brighter, even better, even more wise, even stronger. Now, I want to touch on something really important, which is healing. Because healing from trauma is a big part of this process. Trauma can disconnect us from our intuition because it kicks in those like protective responses, those fear responses when we've been through really tough experiences. And then when we're so used to those protective responses keeping us safe, we start to rely on that fear and that ego in order to keep us safe. Healing is about reclaiming your trust in your own journey. It's about listening to your soul, like learning to really trust deep down and not letting fear make all those decisions. And like I've said in the previous episode, healing is not always about having a very specific intention. Sometimes we heal by like really just allowing ourselves to be in spaces where healing can happen. Like doing things that bring us joy and lightness intuitively. You don't always need to like overanalyze or try to control the healing process, because sometimes the best healing happens when we just let go and we focus on having fun. And that intention is going to get us really far, and it's going to kind of open up some doors so that we can start to really trust that intuition and then let fear step to the side. Be like, hey, fear, I see you. I know that you've protected me to a certain point, but now I want to live a more aligned life, and like you can sit in the passenger seat, but I'm going to drive. Those anxieties, those fears that come up, like, I see you. Thank you for protecting me, but you got to step to the side for now. I'm going to let this intuition do the driving just for a little, see how it feels. That fear and that ego and that anxiety, that's always going to be there, okay? If you ever, for some weird reason, wanted to go back to it, it'll be there. Don't worry. But I encourage you to like, just try. Get curious about the process of like just trying to trust your intuition. And this could be in really small ways at the beginning. So this could be in something like, when you're taking a walk with your dog, maybe you go a different direction than you usually do, like if you're feeling called to. Or maybe you're at the store and you're trying to decide what to make for dinner. And so you just are like, all right, intuition, have at it. Like, what should I make? And you just trust it and you go with whatever comes up first, that initial gut feeling. Or maybe with the clothes you're wearing, like you say, all right, intuition, let me know what color am I supposed to wear immediately. That initial color that hits you, wear that color. Because the way that I see it, every single decision in this human experience, in every single day of your lifetime, in every single moment of your day, every new decision leads you to another decision, which leads you closer and closer to the path that you're supposed to be on. And I firmly believe that every single decision that we make then changes the outcome of a different situation. I know this sounds like kind of out there and crazy, but this is really the way that I see life. Is like, if I chose to, I don't know, park in a certain parking spot versus the other one that I saw, or if I chose to wear a certain color versus a different one that I was about to grab, or if I chose to use a certain plate versus the other one that I chose, I firmly believe that those little tiny decisions actually do correlate to other experiences in our life. It's almost like a chain reaction. It's like that little tiny decision was kind of like a domino, and it causes all of these other chain reactions to happen later on in our like moments or days or weeks or months or years. I don't know. Simmer on that one for a second and let me know what you think about that concept, because I've never really shared that publicly yet. So how do we start practicing trusting our intuition every day, besides those little snippets that I just gave you? 4 tips. Number 1, pay attention. Start noticing how your body reacts to different situations, different people, different experiences. And you don't necessarily need to change anything at first. Just simply observe. So like when you get a little nudge, don't brush it off. Just listen. Give it the space that it's asking for. Number 2 is letting yourself daydream. Give yourself permission to like imagine what feels aligned without worrying about the logistics, without overanalyzing, without trying to get rational on yourself. This is going to allow you to tap into your intuition more easily and kind of like let your brain step to the side. Sometimes it might not really be letting your brain step to the side. It might be like nudging your brain to the side. Number 3 is looking for synchronicities. So like whether it's repeating numbers or noticing patterns in your life or like little signs, these are how the universe communicates with you. Angels, God, your spirit guides, they communicate with you through synchronicities. So pay attention. Synchronicities, if you've never heard that word, or maybe you have and you're like, I don't really grasp what that means. It means little coincidences that feel meaningful. It's like the universe is nudging you in a certain direction or sending you a message. And so some examples, like I said, might be something like repeating numbers. Like if you're saying the same numbers over and over, like 1111 or 444, like I just said I saw earlier, maybe on like the clock or on signs or on license plates or on receipts. These are a lot of times seen as signs that you're in alignment with where you're supposed to be at that exact moment. Another example of a synchronicity might be like running into someone that you were just thinking about, or like they suddenly texted you and you were just thinking about them, or you bump into them at a random place and you were just telling someone about them the day before. It feels like perfect timing, especially if you were just like thinking about them. Another synchronicity might be hearing the same song everywhere. So like if a particular song comes up on the radio, or you're like at the store or in a cafe or like randomly on a playlist, just when you're like going through something really significant, or maybe like the lyrics speak to you in your current situation, you keep hearing it when like you're feeling down, that's a sign of a synchronicity. Another one might be like when there's perfect timing for something. So maybe you show up at the store like right before it closes, you're able to get in just in time to like get whatever it is you need and get out. Or maybe you catch a bus like just as it's pulling up. Or maybe you somehow didn't think you were going to make it to a workout class, and somehow by the grace of God, you end up getting there right on time and you weren't late. Or pairing perfect timing with the numbers is you are on your way home and you happen to get home exactly at 12:12. More meaningful synchronicities might be something like finding symbols. So like something that feels personally significant, maybe like seeing a feather or butterflies everywhere or rainbows, especially after like you set an intention or specifically ask for guidance from spirit or from your spirit guides or source or whatever you want to call it, whoever you speak to for guidance. Another sign of a synchronicity might be hearing about like the same book or the same phrase or idea from like lots of different sources or people. So might be like a friend talks about something and then you hear that same title on a podcast and then it like pops up online. And so it's like the universe is nudging you like, hey, maybe this is an important topic or subject that you need to dive a little bit more into. Another synchronicity might be meeting someone at the perfect time. A perfect example I have is years ago when I started the Autoimmune and You podcast with my good friend Erica, which, shameless plug, if you haven't listened to my other podcast, Autoimmune and You are dealing with chronic illness or autoimmune, I highly recommend going and checking that podcast out. We have 77 episodes out and we stopped recording about a year ago, but there's still episodes out there that'll still guide you on your way. But anyway, I digress. We were talking about creating this podcast. And literally a day or two later, I was like at my friend's, this bar that he worked at, and his friend showed up and he was like, hey, wait, you were just talking to someone about like starting a podcast. I specialize in that. I like help people get their podcasts all set up. Do you want help with it? And I was like, yes, I have no clue where to start. And he's literally the reason that I was able to get this podcast up and running so quickly, because I remembered the steps from doing it previously because he had shown me that. So it means that like when you meet someone that just happens to have like the perfect solution or advice or a connection or even like an object that you've been searching for. Another synchronicity that I get, oh my God, all the fucking time is deja vus or vivid dreams. Like, oh my God, this happens to me every single day. I'm not even kidding you. I have the most vivid dreams I have for the last year and a half specifically, but I've always kind of remembered my dreams. I could go into that on another episode of like dreams because it's very fascinating to me. But anyway, deja vu is like a really strong feeling that like you've been in that exact situation before. And I think the word deja vu is kind of like thrown around like as if it's like, oh, haha, I've like kind of seen this similar thing, or like, oh, you've said something like that before. And I'm like talking like, no, deja vu is like, I know I've been here before. Like I have experienced this exact thing before in another lifetime. That is the strong, like intuitive sense of deja vu. Or maybe you've had like a really vivid dream about something and then something like related or the exact same happens in real life. And that's a reminder once again that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. So these little synchronicities often serve as those little reminders that you're connected to something bigger, and that you can always ask for guidance or validation that you're on the right path. It's kind of like the universe letting you know like, hey, yep, you're still on the right path. So that's something to pay attention to on your path on this journey. Whew, that was a long one. Okay, number 4, final tip for how to start practicing trusting your intuition every day is trusting the detours. If things don't necessarily go the way that you planned, please trust that it's for a reason. So a good example that I have about trusting is I was supposed to have like a little mini festival for my birthday this year on September 1st. And a few days before, there had been like a lot of people that had started dropping out left and right, and like for circumstances out of their control, like moving or funerals and stuff. And my heart just like sank because I really, really wanted those people there. And it was really hard for me to digest like that these people weren't going to be there. But I still had plenty of people that were going. But at the same time, I was like, I just want to cancel. I don't feel intuitively like I should be doing this. And Max was like, no, it'll still be great. Like, let's do it. Let's still do it. We've been planning this for months. He convinced me to go through with it. I'm like, okay, fine. Went against my intuition. Because at the time, I truly was not 100% certain if it was fear and self-doubt and like sadness that was overruling that decision that I wanted to make to cancel everything, or if it was truly intuition telling me like, no, this isn't supposed to be going on. Like, you need to cancel. So a few days later, long story short, super long story short, we ended up having to cancel anyway. And I still to this day, like, don't exactly know 100% why we had to cancel. But there were circumstances out of our control that happened that made us cancel anyway. And I was reminded, like, hey, I probably should have trusted my intuition the few days prior, and I would have gone through literally an entire day less of heartbreak, because the entire day that we were supposed to like go to set up for my birthday festival, long story short, I was like crying all day because I was so upset. Like, why is this not supposed to happen? I don't understand. Like, we've planned so much. I've worked so hard to make this happen. And I just had to trust it and be like, you know what? Obviously it wasn't supposed to happen. And it took me like literally days to get over. But now I'm like, okay, whatever the reason was, I don't know if I'm ever going to know, but it didn't happen and it wasn't supposed to. And it's not something I can harp on. I have to trust that detour. If things don't go the way I planned, that means it's for a reason. Because the universe is clearing some obstacles away from your path. And it might feel really, really uncomfortable in the moment, but I promise you it's always for a reason. Like I said way earlier, like, we might not know exactly why until much later. To sum all of this up, if you're wondering, like, what does alignment feel like? What does it feel like to trust your intuition? It feels light. It feels easy. It feels like flow. Intuition is your connection to something bigger, to something greater. And the more that you listen, the brighter and more aligned your entire life is going to start to become. Let's quickly talk about what alignment is, because I've said that many times throughout this episode. And just in case you're like, I kind of understand the concept, but I want like, definition, please. Alignment means being in harmony with your true self, with values and the flow of the universe. And so when your thoughts and your actions and your energy are all in sync with what feels really deeply intuitively right for you at that authentic level, that's when you're in alignment. And that means that life tends to be a lot smoother and you start to get more clarity, and opportunities seem to just like kind of flow into your life without having to force anything. And it just feels like you're on the right path. Even when challenges arrive, there's like an inner sense of peace and just knowing that, okay, I'm still on the right path, even if things feel a little bit challenging right now. And intuition plays a really big role in alignment, because that's kind of, like I said, your inner compass. And so it guides you toward those choices and those experiences that are actually aligned with your highest self. Intuition is that gut feeling, that inner knowing, that like instinct that kind of nudges you in certain directions. And a lot of times there's not a logical or rational explanation for it, and we just have to kind of blindly trust it. Like I said earlier, the more you practice, the easier it will get to blindly trust it. But all in all, it's how your soul communicates with you through like these feelings or these flashes of insight, or even like those subtle body pings that we talked about that guide you towards that alignment. And so when you're aligned, your intuition gets louder. Like I said, turning up the volume on that intuition and then turning down the volume on the fear, the doubt, the external noise, the distractions. And then you can start to sense more clearly what actually feels right for you. And then you can more easily and quickly make decisions that actually support your growth and support your well-being. And then on the flip side, if you're out of alignment, a lot of times your intuition might feel a little bit muffled, almost like you're like solely relying on that fear-based thinking, or maybe on external influences like people telling you what to do. And it might feel really hard to connect with that inner wisdom. I want to remind you that we all have periods of stepping out of alignment. If you've ever heard of Abraham Hicks, they are a group of souls that Esther Hicks channels. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I highly recommend just go on YouTube and search Abraham Hicks and just find one video snippet that resonates with you, because there is so much wisdom there. Anyway, Abraham Hicks a lot of times talks about being in the vortex and being out of the vortex. And so when you're in the vortex, everything is in alignment. And so positive experiences keep just kind of clinging to you like a magnet, and things just kind of feel really flowy. And then it's bound to happen because we're human. We step out of that alignment sometimes. We step out of the vortex. And things stop flowing so easily. Things start feeling a little bit more challenging. Things start feeling a little bit more confusing and distracting. So the more that we practice trusting our intuition, the longer we can stay in that alignment at a time. So long story short, alignment and intuition go hand in hand because intuition guides you towards alignment. When you're aligned, your intuition is that trusted and natural and easy way to navigate life. I hope that this episode allows you to start recognizing and trusting those intuitive pings in your life and throughout your day. And if this resonates with you, share this episode with someone that you think might need a little bit of a reminder to trust their gut. I really appreciate you for tuning in today. I appreciate you for holding space and holding space for yourself. Please, please, please take just a moment, whatever platform you're listening on, to rate and review this episode. You can leave a comment on Spotify. You can review on Apple Podcasts. I believe you can do the same on Amazon Music and iHeartRadio. At the very least, just take literally 1 second to click those 5 stars for that review because that seriously bumps this up so much. If you have an extra minute or two to leave even a 1-line review, I would appreciate it so fucking much. You have no idea how much it means to me when you share your experience with me from listening to this podcast, or you share how this has positively impacted your life. I love podcasting. I think it's a really beautiful way to heal in my own way. It's very cathartic, but I also think that it's a really beautiful experience to be able to share this with you because I know that it strengthens so many of your own relationships with yourself. And that is a beautiful thing because the brighter you shine, the brighter the people around you shine. And we create that ripple effect in this entire world. So until next time, remember to keep shining and keep aligning, and we'll talk next time.